So let's explore the question that so many people ask me: how do I increase sales? How do I increase the sales in my business? And I say, let's explore that concept, because we can really only start by scratching the surface of the premise of sales. And then perhaps in the future, what I'll do is record some very specific videos on sales training and the transactional process and all the phases of sales training. But let's start at the beginning and ask ourselves, if I want to increase sales in my business, then I have to ensure that I have a value. I have to have value in terms of a product or service that I offer someone. That's where it really begins. And so even though that sounds obvious, you always want to start at the basics and ask yourself that. Sit down and explore that concept. Commerce will occur naturally, organically, when the value of the product or service that you offer exceeds the price in the mind or in the perception of your prospective customer. Okay, so we need to somehow communicate that value. And we've talked before about what is your unique selling proposition? How do you communicate that value? And you have to start with asking yourself, why is my product or service worth the price? And there are 4 ways that you can increase value in a product or service. And the first one is the customer experience. So ask yourself, in what ways can I improve the customer experience? And make that an ongoing thing. In fact, in all 4 of these ways of increasing value, you want to perpetually refine those aspects of your product or service to increase value. You need to, because your competition is. So the first one, again, is the customer experience. As an example, your customers, if they have to go through a long and tedious process to obtain your product or service, that is maybe something they're willing to do because the price is right or it's such a great product. But if you can somehow streamline that process for them, fewer clicks, fewer steps that they have to take, then the customer experience, maybe it's just something as simple as the people they interact with are very, very friendly. That's an improvement in customer experience, and that increases value. The next one, of course, is the quality of your product, and you always have to, I really encourage you to make sure that your product has quality that's on par with or superior to your competition. You're not going to get very far trying to offer an inferior quality product. And of course, depending on what type of product it is, there are various ways that you can improve the quality. The next one is the convenience. And that's related to customer experience, but if you think of convenience as a standalone way of improving value for your product, then you ask yourself things like, how do I eliminate wait times for my customer? We've talked about where location. If you have a brick and mortar store, someplace that a person has to physically go to in order to get the product, then the convenience of having an ideal location can mean the difference between you and a competitor in terms of offering more value for your customer. And then the last one is pricing. And of course, that's one way that you can offer a better value proposition than your competition, is by undercutting them on price. And there's no shortage of successful businesses that have done that. Costco and Walmart as examples, and Amazon is certainly always trying to compete on price. But you're always wanting to look at those 4 different ways of adding value. And then, so to begin with, when we talk about how to improve sales within your organization, you start with that unique selling proposition. You get a sheet of paper. And I always want to remind you, if you don't have a sheet of paper and a pen in front of you, pause the video right now, go get that and take some notes. You want to take something away from this video that's actionable today, something that you can implement today within your business. And this would be a good place to start, which is writing down what is your unique selling proposition, if you haven't already done that, and ask yourself, in those 4 different things that we just talked about, in customer experience, in quality, in convenience, or in pricing, do I have an advantage? And document that. outline that in such a way. And then the next thing is we got to start thinking about, how can I communicate that to my customer? And in this regard, we have to differentiate between, I guess, marketing and sales. You hear them grouped together, sales and marketing, as a department all the time. And depending on your style of business, they may be very much related. But in both sales and marketing, what you're trying to do is, in a compelling way, communicate your unique selling proposition to your customer. And so it begins with writing that down and exploring it. And just because something is obvious to you, don't assume it's obvious to your customer. You may have really great attributes to your product that differentiate it from the competition, and your customers have no idea about that. And so get that down, document that, and begin to ask yourself, how can I communicate this to my customers? Sales is really about influence, and we talked about the communicating in a compelling way. That's influencing. So some of you have very active sales processes, and some of you have passive. You kind of think of that as marketing being the passive communication. And if you have a sales transaction that involves a salesperson, business to business or business to retail customer, then that's maybe more active. And when we get into the sales training, the sales steps and the various phases of sales training, we'll talk more about how those differ in a virtual environment or a brick and mortar or face-to-face meeting, that kind of thing. But you need to, both in a passive way as well as in an active way, try to create communication to your customer that improves the value in his mind. Remember what we said earlier. Anytime that the value surpasses the price in the perception of your customer, it'll naturally occur. Commerce will occur. You'll have an economic transaction that will occur. And so we need to spend some time putting that down in writing and thinking about that. And in terms, another thing when you're asking yourself about unique selling proposition, you want to start with, what is the product or service? People buy three different things. It's not just the product or service that they are making a decision. In fact, I used to always talk about, what is the number one thing that prevents people from buying? And take a note if you don't know this. Maybe you want to pause the video and speculate, write down a couple of answers. What is the number one thing that prevents somebody from buying? The answer is, and you probably have lots of answers that are true in terms of they're related to what I'm about to say, or they do prevent people from buying, or they're precursors to what I'm talking about. The number one thing that prevents people from buying is fear of making a mistake. Nobody wants to part with their hard-earned money, currency, and then later find out they made a mistake. I paid too much. Oh, there was a better quality one over here. Oh, this brand doesn't have a good reputation. And so that's another thing when you're spending time documenting your unique selling proposition in order to help you increase sales. Or rather, you want to ask yourself, in what way will prospective customers perhaps perceive the potential for making a mistake, and try to eliminate that in their minds. Try to eliminate the risk that a customer faces. And so there are things like, of course, money back guarantees. Those are in place specifically to address the concept that a person is afraid of making a mistake. But there's far more than that. It's all back to this unique selling proposition. Compelling ways of communicating to your customer your value and why it would not be a mistake to invest in your product or service. Earlier I was saying that there are three things, not just your product or service, that people need to buy, and people buy from those that they know, like, and trust. Again, people buy from those that they know, like, and trust. And your product or service has to be compelling and offer value, but also your company has to be trustworthy. If nobody's heard of your company, or your prospective customer doesn't have any experience or history with your company, you need to do some things as part of your sales, as part of your communication, your influence, to communicate the idea that your company is reputable, that it's a brand that they can rely on. whether it's the product or the service. And then lastly, the third thing a person is buying besides the product and service or your company and the brand is you. So the person that they have to interact with in order, so it might be a salesperson, you may be the salesperson, you have to sell yourself. Okay, so think of things in those three levels. You've got to sell yourself, you've got to sell the brand or the company, that's going to stand behind the product, and then you have to sell the product and service itself. Those three things are different, and you're not going to increase sales by only focusing on one of those things. Always ask yourself, how can I improve the reputation of all three of those things? I want you to think of the sales process in your mind's eye as a funnel. At the top of the funnel is where we put in leads, okay, prospective customers. We have interest in our product or service. And at the bottom of the funnel, what's dripping out the end is sales. And remember this phrase, he or she with the biggest database wins. You need to increase the amount of what's being the pipe that's going into the database. You need a big database, or rather into the funnel. You need a big database of prospective customers. It's a numbers game and it's all about math. And so spend some time at the top of the funnel is marketing, a means of more passively communicating your unique selling proposition to your customers. And then throughout the funnel are the various stages or conversions. We're looking for conversions between one phase of the sales process to the next. And then the end of the funnel will come your sales. And when we talk about increasing our sales, it's just mathematical. It just logically makes sense. You want to increase the amount of leads going in the top to increase the sales going below. And over time, you have to increase your capacity, because when we're talking about real businesses, of course, you can diminish your value simply by increasing the amount of flow going into your funnel. As an example, if you think about it, and you had, X number of customers per day or per week entering into your sales funnel, into your sales pipeline, and you were capable of doing a good job with customer service and dealing with those, and maybe you were able to convert 10 of those or however many into sales. And all of a sudden you double or triple or quadruple that amount, and you can't handle the incoming sales calls, the incoming telephone traffic. If you have a brick and mortar store, maybe you can't handle the incoming traffic. There's a lot of people waiting to deal with you. Maybe your website or your logistics for your shipping is incompatible with so much traffic. So all of a sudden your customer experience is compromised and the value goes down. Or you don't have sufficient personnel or equipment to be able to process the orders, and so people are waiting far longer than they otherwise would, and all of a sudden the convenience goes down. So you want to be careful with that notion when I talk about things theoretically, that of course mathematically the more leads you have at the top of the funnel, the more sales you'll have. You also have to deal with the logistics and making sure that you can grow your company to handle the capacity of increasing sales. So, that's part of management. Each business owner and the management team needs to look at, where is our greatest opportunity here? Is it about increasing value, or and even though that's something you want to do on a perpetual basis, you might have a greater opportunity in increasing the capacity that your business can handle to increase sales. And if that's where it is, then invest the requisite resources, whether that's your effort, your time, your brain power, or financially. You may have to invest financially in some resources into increasing your capacities. And what we want to do is also look at, throughout the sales process, the conversions, because what we can do is we can hopefully pinpoint where some areas are a little weak, and then we can work on those. And let's use as an example that people are being driven to your website, and your numbers are very exciting about more and more web traffic that you're getting. but they bounce. Your bounce rate is unacceptably high. And so then what you find, and the ones that don't bounce, maybe you're converting those further down the funnel at a very acceptable percentage from your perspective. So then what you can do is you can focus on, well, I need to spend some time finding out why I get so much traffic coming to the website. And when they do spend the time to research, or they do go a little further, they will invest in the product and result in sales, but so much bounce. Then you can look at your website and ask yourself, maybe I'm not doing a good job of communicating in a compelling way on my website, and you can focus your efforts there. And so with each phase of the process, and again, in a future video, we'll look at those various phases. If the conversions are low, if there's an outlying performance metric that requires your attention, you can focus your effort there in order to get more sales. And once you've invested in getting somebody into the pipeline, into the funnel, into your database, we don't want to just assume because they didn't convert immediately that that's a lost lead. It may indeed be lost, but many people, various people have different reasons for buying, and their reason for not buying could simply be timing. It could be that they are the personality of somebody who does the research well in advance, weeks, months, even years in advance of being prepared, depending on what you're selling. That may not be uncommon. It may be such a major investment for them that they need some time, some months to think about it. And so what you want to do is nurture your leads. Keep feeding value to those people within your pipeline in some way. And we'll talk more about how you can do that. But the concept I want you to come away from in this video is understanding that a lead is not completely lost just because they didn't convert at that moment. And you don't want to always spend all your focus on getting more and more traffic in the top of the funnel when you've already invested in getting a lot of traffic in there to begin with. And are there prospective sales for the future that just need to be given some time and nurtured and grow, and then eventually they'll result in sales. And there are 3 ways, we talked about this in the last video, there are 3 ways that you can increase sales. You can conquest more customers. So if you look at the bottom of the funnel, we've got more customers coming out the bottom of the funnel. We converted a lot more people to sales. Then that's one way, obviously, of increasing sales. But another way, and we do that, of course, to increase, again, going back a moment, to increase the amount of sales that we can conquest, new customers that we can conquest, you got to start with networking. Depending on your business, it's like, well, who do I know that may be a prospective customer? And you want to make sure that everyone you know knows what you do and they know about the value, because the people closest to you may be the best source of customers to begin with. Again, it's business dependent. And but even if you don't think the people you know, your relatives or your close friends, are part of your target market, who do they know? There's the concept of 6 degrees of separation, and through 6 different person who knows a person who knows a person, and so on, that kind of covers the whole world. So by making sure that everyone you know in your personal center of influence, by networking with everyone you know, making sure they understand the unique value proposition of your product or service, then if they come across somebody that knows, then they might be able to refer. And so that's a second way that you can increase the amount of leads going into the funnel and get more conquest sales. And then, of course, marketing, finding a way to more passively, whether it's advertising on the internet, content marketing, the various types of marketing. We can talk about that in another video as well. But think of that as one of the 3 main ways to increase sales. When we're talking about your income statement and how many sales you've made, if you increase the number of customers that you conquest, you will increase sales. The second way that you can do that is to increase the size of the sales transaction, the purchase transaction. So once I have a customer, And you've all seen this in things that you've purchased. So think about when you purchase. It could be on Amazon. Before you get to the, or when you go to the checkout, customers who bought this also like this, and they suggest other products. That's about increasing the value of each individual transaction. And so how can you do that with your business? Somebody is purchasing, widget A or B, and you say, those who are considering widget A also considered widget B, or you might offer a combo, and you see that in fast food restaurants and movie theater concessions. They're always trying to increase the amount of the individual transaction. So number one, you can conquest more customers, find more customers. Number two, you can increase the amount, the dollar amount per transaction. Or the third one is you can increase the frequency. So if we thought of, again, of the fast food restaurant or the concession movie, maybe they get their customers coming back more frequently. Are there ways that you can encourage your customers to shop from you more often? Maybe you have a variety of products and services and they've only tried a sampling of what you have to offer. And through a good email marketing campaign or your sales reps reaching out to them and letting them know that you have a special right now, maybe you're automotive sales and a person was in a 5-year lease and 3 or 4 years into it, you convince them that you really need some pre-owned inventory and you get them a great trade value and there's great incentives on the new ones. So you increase the frequency, bring your customer back a little sooner. So with all of these concepts, I want you to start by assembling some performance metrics. You have to have projections. Okay, so look, if you've already taken the time in the past to project your sales, or you have an income statement you can go back to and look at historically what your sales have been, and you want to increase your sales, then set some goals. Have some targets that you want to try to achieve and project those. Try to make them as realistic as possible. If you're newer to this and you don't have much data to rely on, really projections are an educated guess. Give it your best guess and then monitor that over time. And not only your sales, but you also want to look at the various things we talked about in terms of conversions. It's like, well, how many the performance metrics? How many people can I get to my website? How many unique visitors can I get? And of those, what is a reasonable amount of those that will convert to leads that submit a web form or email me for a price quote? What's a reasonable percentage that will convert to a phone call where they call in and inquire about my service? Or if you have a brick and mortar store, what is a reasonable percentage of those that will convert to booking an appointment to come in and view something? All of this stuff is important. You have to it's all about math again. You have to get some projections down and you have to have some targets and some goals available. So let's start there. And in the next video or in a future video, maybe the next one, we'll get into really what are the nuts and bolts of each of the stages of the sales process. Okay, so we'll wrap up with that. And what I'd like you to do is refer to your notes and pick something off of that is actionable. And ideally, it would be your greatest opportunity for improvement. Don't try to do too much at once. Look at your notes, rewatch the video, ask yourself, what is the main thing I can get out of this video for my business, for my unique circumstances, and that I can apply today. And apply it today. Work on it today. Put a plan together. It's all about planning. Planning, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. All right, until next time, thank you.